Hi, everybody. Welcome back to RHAP's coverage of Survivor 50. My name is Mike Bloom, and I'm back with another preseason podcast giving you what you need to know about the cast of Survivor 50. And today, we're running the facts and the figures, which is appropriate for the heroic actuary herself. It's season 35 runner up Chrissy Hofbeck, a record tying challenge beast, a strategic threat, and part of one of the most controversial endings we've experienced in recent years on Survivor. And she makes her welcome return to the island once more to see if she could bump that number up to 1 in the placement. I am not alone here, joined by somebody to break down everything that went down in Chrissy's game, is a true hero, healer, and hustler in her own right, Chantele Francis.
Oh, I love that I am an HHH. Thank you so much for the honor. I love it. I'm so excited to talk about Chrissy. Chrissy was one survivor that I really felt like I wanted to champion behind her because I was rooting for her.
We
And
were
she
all
wasn't
rooting for you.
exactly. And it didn't come through in the end. And I really felt like it should have. And so I wanted to talk about her. First thing is that when she played, she's the same age that I am right now, and she's on the old lady tribe. And I'm like, am I an old lady and I didn't know? And so I wanted to support obviously women, older women. I loved the old era of Survivor for sure. And I think that season and what happened with her it really shook me. And I was really, really pissed for a while.
Yeah, and you were certainly not alone, to the point where in that era, people were instantly saying Chrissy should come back due to both, the game she had ran up until day 39, and then obviously the circumstances that had her coming in second place, which we will get into. And, the interesting thing is that up to this point, the characters, the standouts from the latter 30 seasons have not had the opportunity to return. There was Winners at War, which had only winners, obviously, and that's basically it, with the exception of Bruce. But I'm curious, Chantele, when you heard Survivor 50 would be returnees, I think there were some people that were a little nervous of like the Chrissies, the Christians, the Angelinas, the Devons. Will production largely forget about them in lieu of these old school favorites and new school favorites? Did you expect to see Chrissy on this cast?
I did. I feel like they owed her one. They owed her a big one. I felt that she was a real driving force for the entire season. I did like a rewatch. Like I wasn't like studying and taking notes, but I had it on in the background and I watched the rest of that season over again. And I really didn't even realize at the time how much she pushed the story and the moves and the blind sides and the alliances. Like she really was a driving force for a lot of the season. And so I definitely felt that production owed her one. At least another opportunity to play. And I was not surprised whatsoever that she was going to be coming back.
Well, for someone who pushed the story within her own season, let's hear the story of Chrissy herself. Chantele, what is the tale of Chrissy Hofbeck in Survivor Heroes versus Healers versus Hustlers?
Well, in short, she started off appearing to be weak, appearing to be somebody that they could easily just discard. But then Ryan saw something in her and wanted to potentially save her or protect her from the first tribal council. And she didn't even need this. But I think that gave her a sense of like, someone wants her here. Like something happened when she received that she kind of realized that like, oh wait, it's not my fate to go out here. Like I'm going to start working hard to be able to kind of force my way through this game.
Yeah, and for the uninitiated, basically it was that Ryan Aldrich, who was on another tribe during the marooning, found like a super idol which could be played after the votes to send to one person on the losing tribe. And so Chrissy, who was visibly throwing up after the challenge that they lost, he decided to send to her to broker an early bond.
And so she continued after surviving the first tribal to realize that she does have agency in this game. She can forge her own path. And so I think from then she started gaining allies. She started working with people. She really was using her, what's her career? It's an
She's
analyst.
an
Actuary. But she was very analytical. She was realizing the power that she had from being able to persuade people or to convince people to work with her. And she kind of just always had people wanting to make big moves with her. And so even when there was swipe drops, she was able to evade swipe drops, evade people kind of coming for her. And in the end, then she becomes a comp beast to secure herself in the end game. And it took her all the way to the final 3. And unfortunately, she wasn't able to, get rid of her biggest adversary, which was Ben. Ben was somebody that she had been working with, then wasn't working with, then was kind of working with. And they had a kind of a back and forth. It was the story of Ben versus Chrissy. And in the end, unfortunately, Chrissy couldn't slay the dragon of Ben. Ben was victorious, unfortunately.
Which is ironic because Ben was labeled King Arthur, by his opposition. So he would be the one slaying the dragons. But it comes in a more unconventional format than you might think. Now, New Era fans might be used to the idea of Final Four fire making. It was introduced in this season as a surprise. So for those who may not know, super duper old school fans who haven't watched modern seasons, nowadays, in the Final Four, rather than voting for somebody, you would instead, the immunity winner gets the ability to bring, they're guaranteed a spot in the final 3, right? Unless they give it up. They then pick a person to join them in the final 3. The other 2 people automatically face off in a fire-making challenge where the winner fills that 3rd slot and the loser is the final juror. This was not information that was presented to them from the very beginning. The theme of the season loosely was secrets. There were a bunch of advantages that were sort of hidden around and players would find them and be able to do with that information what they wanted to. Chrissy won the final immunity challenge, tying the record. And she received the information about the big change that would happen. It's a pretty iconic moment where as she's reading the parchment out loud, she gasps in the middle of it as it cuts to her explaining what to do. And listen, we could go back and forth as to how much this did screw Chrissy over at the end of the day, how she does sitting next to Ben as opposed to how she sits next to Devin, who she did want to go to the final 3 with over Ben. But it considerably threw a wrench into her plans, which was this entire narrative was, I need to get rid of Ben, and he just keeps finding and playing idols over and over and over again. Now I finally got him. No more idols. He's lost immunity. He's right where I want him. And then Deus Ex Machina comes in at the last second, which I don't believe was specifically for Ben. I think this was something they always had in mind for the season, but it certainly helps players like Ben.
You don't think that if it was somebody that they didn't care about, that they might have been maybe we won't do this. And I don't know. You think that they would they had it in mind all along?
Yes, I think that looking at, I remember this happening, obviously, in the wake of the finale. This was the big talking point. I remember Adam Klein talking about, he could understand why this was brought into the entire Survivor production skeleton after David Wright was voted out at the Final Four, Millennials versus Gen X. I think for a while, look at the fact that, how was the Final 3 created? The Final 3 was created in Cook Islands because production was feeling like, well, the biggest threat is always just taken out in 3rd place, doesn't make it to the final 2. It's leading for more straightforward outcomes. Now let's expand it out to a final 3. That worked maybe a few times, but then the goalpost got shifted. Now it's okay, let's get rid of the biggest threat at the final 4. And so I think they brought this in as a way for these big characters, these big players, to sort of have a last gasp, a last opportunity to fight for their spot without necessarily needing to campaign for votes.
Okay, fine. You've convinced me. But I just remember when I was
it looks incredibly sus. Let me just say that on the surface. It looks incredibly suspect.
It definitely was sus. It was kind of Ben did have a great story. He was a family man. He was an ex-Marine. He's talked about his PTSD. He definitely was an American hero. And and he was the person that everybody was trying to get out of this game, and he was able to survive. But it was just kind of wasn't 3 idols enough? Did he need something else to guarantee him, that position in the end, in the eyes of the jury, where they just want to give it to him? So, but I can't understand that they just didn't want to have it be a straightforward vote at the final four. So I get it, but when I watched it at that time, I was just furious.
Yeah.
I was furious that somebody, well, when you know how to play a game a certain way and then they introduce something new that the players have no idea how to work around. Like, there's nothing that they can have done now. It's too late. They can't have gotten him out 4 episodes or 4 votes ago. Like, they just didn't know that this was coming. And so that, I also just didn't like that, as like, she would have done something differently if she knew this information. And so I just, yes, you got the element of surprise and, oh, it's exciting and enticing for the audience. Was it? I don't know. But I wish that she had more information, that she could have maybe used it with her strategy, because she's such a strategist.
Well, let's get some information on the strategist herself, Chrissy Hofbeck. Some, again, facts and figures the way Chrissy would like it. Chrissy is currently 54 years old, was 47 at the time of playing Heroes, Healers, Hustlers. As you mentioned, Chantele, she was placing ultimately in second. She got 2 jury votes in the end by a vote of 5-2 to 1. She played the full 39 days, won 5 challenges in the pre-merge, and won 8 individual post-merge challenges, which primarily includes 4 individual immunity wins, tying, again, a record for women. What's interesting is that Chrissy wins 4 of the final 5 individual immunity challenges. Like, she doesn't really get into this streak until, she has a lot of highs and lows, and she hits a major low when she thinks she's in control. There's this cross-tribal alliance happening at the merge against the healers. They take out a few easy people in a row, and then a number of people, including Ben, low-key, end up flipping sides. They decide to form their own thing, blindside Chrissy's closest ally, JP, and that's when Chrissy decides, oh, my back is against the wall, and starts kicking butt. It doesn't mean that, she wasn't the brunt of votes when she was vulnerable, though. She ends up with 7 votes against her, and something that I didn't remember until I went back through it, Chantele, is like, Chrissy is a target for a good amount of tribal councils. At the swap tribe, the very first vote she goes to, she nearly gets voted out. It's a 2 healers, 2 hustlers, 2 heroes, and a healer in the middle. The healers were with the hustlers, but because Ryan had brokered that relationship with her, he actually flips on the hustlers to take out Rourke instead of her. And at the merge, the healers are going for her because she is this big, very explicitly brainy threat, but she's able to work a lot of the numbers and work a lot of very key relationships as well. I think we'll talk a bit about maybe the connotation about Chrissy's social game overall that may or may not have contributed to her loss, but she was able to make the right relationships when she needed to survive when she was the most vulnerable.
Absolutely. I didn't realize as well how many times she was in danger. I was like, ooh, I know the outcome, obviously, because I'm watching it for the second time, but for that work for vote, I was like, whoa, that was intense, because she kind of should have gone, but she did have that relationship with Ryan, and it was intense in that moment where I was like, if the first time I was watching it, I didn't think that she should have stayed. I thought that it was going to go the other way. And also, though, she was winning those immunity challenges near the end. And so that's because she did need to. I do think that they would have voted her out if she didn't win those. And so it's kind of like she had these immunity wins, and then Ben had these immunity idols. And so I guess they're kind of equal with protecting each other. And so, but then Ben just gets that, lucky streak at the end where he gets to do fire and impress the jury. So, but I think they were both targeted, and if they won in the only way that they could in the end game.
What do you think is the quintessential Chrissy move or Chrissy moment amongst the many she made in season 35?
Chrissy move. Well, I definitely, just in general, the fact that she was a really good liar, and she knew, and she was very vocal with in her confessionals with what she was doing. The time she's like, I don't really feel like talking to Ben right now, or we're not really friends, but I'm gonna make it seem like we're friendly. So I think the way that she was always kind of able to finesse her relationships and she was able to get people to want to work with her. I think that could be, considering it's not like a move, but it's like her style of gameplay is kind of like finessing relationships. She's a finesser.
Yeah, I think a key example of that is actually in that aforementioned swap vote, where again, she knows she's in danger. And so she goes to JP and she straight up just makes up a girls' alliance because she wants Rourke to be targeted. She feels like Rourke is probably the smartest person on this tribe next to me. She's the swing vote. I got a gun for her. But JP is like, well, Rourke's strong in challenges. I don't want to lose again. And then Chrissy just makes up a bald-faced lie and says, well, just so you know, there's a girls' alliance happening. And JP immediately says, all right, well, I'm voting for her and things like that. So I think that, as you mentioned, Chrissy has the ability to turn a pretty good narrative if it suits what she needs to get done, which is great considering that, again, she found herself more vulnerable than you might think for someone who won 4 individual immunity challenges. But at the end of the day, she never ended up like in true danger because she was able to find the right places to approach people with the right mentalities.
Yes, and I think that the way that she approaches, willing to lie, like she's willing to lie very convincingly. She wants to play the game. She wants to be strategic. She wants to build the relationships that she needs to be able to do well in the game. I think it's easily going to be transferable into season 50. I think that we're going to see a similar I don't think she's going to change up her style of gameplay when she comes back. I think that she's going to find a number of one person that she's going to be working with and then branch out into have a little alliance. Like, I think that she's going to do that. And so, yeah, I think that her finessing, and I agree with you that was a really great move over that lie that she came up with just to get, and she knew what lie to say to the right person to get him on her side. And so I think we might see something similar again in season 50. I think that's a kind of her style of gameplay.
Well, as we move from strengths to weaknesses, I think we have to bring up what the fan community, I would say, believes is the biggest sort of flaw in Chrissy's game, which is her social game. And it's weird that we're talking about like one-on-one relationships are great, but I think what the jury kind of lambasts her for at Tribal Council, final Tribal Council, is feeling like she did not necessarily like make concerted efforts to talk with some of them as people. And look, you say that maybe she could hide personal qualms she had about individuals. That was not the case a couple of times. I think, her relationship with Joe Mena is a very key example where she just did not like Joe from the jump, was more than happy to scrap with him about it at Tribal Council. I mean, even Ben, after Chrissy is kind of duped by him twice at the JP vote and then at the Joe vote, like, she regards him very angrily. And Ben makes this observation, be it accurate or not, and says, like, when anyone is against you, you villainize them and you say that they are a jerk. So looking back on the season, especially, like, what is your sense from this, again, third person perspective of Chrissy's social game? And do you think that was really predicated on how she lost?
Well, it's definitely like how you make people feel in the end is going to be how they're going to vote for you, likely in Survivor or in other social strategy games too. Not everybody's going to be like, but best game wins. Like, you're going to be taking in your relationships with people. And yes, there were times where I was like, oh, Chrissy, you can soften that tone a little bit just to play nice. I think okay, if we're going to say something that she might change that part of her game. Would be this having a little bit softer edges. But I think, and this might be an unpopular opinion, but I think the fact that she was a women and having a strong opinion about something and willing to vocalize it's not really welcome that often that women are allowed to have a strong opinion without her being kind of villainized for it. We had Ben not speaking that nicely, fondly about many people that season, and you didn't get any blowback on his tone or how kind of dismissive he was with the Ben bombs and like how he's talking to people in the group. Like, he wasn't necessarily super kind and humble and taking a back seat and doesn't want to rustle any feathers here. And so I do think that if Chrissy was in a male body, that she might be received a little bit differently, even with how she might have spoken to some of these players. Now, granted, like I would be a social player. I would be very, very concerned about my relationships with people because I know that that's how I'd be getting votes, and I don't think I'd be winning all these immunity challenges. So I do think that that's something that I would be very like concerned with and very, very careful about. But I can also understand from her perspective that she is also just being herself, and Joe was being annoying, and so she wanted to vocalize it. So I do think she's just villainized maybe a little bit because of our perception of how women are supposed to be in and interact with people.
I think that's very valid. I mean, something that was definitely noted at the time the season aired as well is sort of the string of young women in particular who were voted off and what they would say about Chrissy, like Rourke and then Allie and then Jessica and then Desi. They did not have very favorable opinions of her. And I think, it might have been a bit of like, oh, you're sweet talking me and then you vote me out. Part of it might have been like Rourke says this in the tribal council where she gets voted out. Weird that we're like fixating on that tribal council in particular, but like she points out, Chrissy, you and I have never talked any game until today. I think she says like the day you needed me was the day that you called. And so like it's interesting in that she does again have the ability to build close bonds. Like again, she's able to get Ryan over, which saves her butt at that very vote. But this sort of comes across in the final tribal council where Chrissy, trying to prove her social game, is like, I'm going to go down the line and tell you like one thing I know about you. I'm going to Christina myself, essentially. And I think that on the one hand, yes, that is like tangible proof. On the other hand, A, that might serve as confirmation bias for jurors. And B, some people might find that like transactional at best, right? Like, okay, so then you only found out my ACT score because this was the one thing you wanted to pull out of your pocket, And I totally agree with your point that like, I think this is who Chrissy is. Like, I think she can absolutely soften her edges, and I think she would have a mind to do so for season 50. But I have to imagine that like the way she was operating is just kind of who she is as a person as well, which she can't really help.
And she's on the heroes tribe to begin with. Why was she considered a hero again? Because she was a mother? Was it?
She talks in the final tribal council trying to, justify it, saying like she played a heroic game. I mean, that was definitely the biggest eyebrow raiser, I would say. For big eyebrow raising theme, arguably the biggest in Survivor history up to this point of like, okay, why is because I think a lot of this was occupationally based, right? We had, as you said, an ex-Marine, we had a lifeguard, we had a firefighter, and then we had the actuary. But I think also Chrissy's life story outside of her occupation speaks to a lot of heroicness as well. And certainly after the fact, I mean, Chrissy has been through the ringer, has become, like a lowercase s survivor as well as a capital S survivor. She had to have like a double mastectomy a few years ago where she had a brief scare with cancer. So like she has been through a lot before, during, and now after the game.
But she's also been involved in the Survivor, right? She's still watching the seasons and stuff like. She's still like immersed in the community.
So I would say immerse in the community is a little different than like watching the show. I believe she does. I believe she does watch the seasons, but I think maybe like someone around her era, someone like an Aubrey, for instance, like maybe just due to a lot of the stuff that went down around that time, and perhaps maybe some of her own very understandable feelings towards how everything shook out in the end game. She sort of like removed herself at the time from like, I'm going to make a podcast appearance every season talking about these things. I think she's definitely still watches the show. I think if you tune into Kellen Bechtold's like Road to Reality episode, where first off, Chrissy talks about her own cancer journey in much better words than I ever could. But she does watch the show. She definitely does. She just is not as active in talking about it as I think a lot of other people on her cast are.
Gotcha. So I do think that Chrissy, I think that this probably hurt her, like how the final tribal council went down. I do think, she was just being herself. I don't think that she was intentionally trying to ice anybody out or not getting to know anybody. I think she was there to play a game, and she was always bringing it back to like, it's just a game, it's just a game, it's just a game. And I think that she didn't realize how much these social connections were going to be important for the end game, because if they saw how much she was playing the game, that they would award it to her. And so I do think that she probably stepped away a little bit for the fact that she kind of, it probably hurt, that Ben got to have this great twist that was going to help him look great in the eyes of the jury. And then also she's going to have to deal with the fact that people weren't really happy with her socially. And so, yeah, she was probably hurt by how that went down. I'd be a little bit upset. I'm happy that she said yes to come back, but
Yeah.
I wouldn't be surprised if she was like, ooh, that's like PTSD in another way coming back to this game.
Well, though, maybe the thing that brought her over was the fact that, technically speaking, Final Four firemaking may not be in this season. Remember, this is one of the first things we voted on in the hands of the fans voting. So maybe just the pure idea of not having it at the Final Four was enough to bring her over the line.
Right. Which way do you vote?
I wonder if you just tune back like 20 minutes to hear my thoughts on Final Four firemaking. If you could just like pick a little bit as to maybe the way I voted. But let's talk about the other people who said yes besides Chrissy. Let's take a look at the cast of Survivor 50. So Chrissy, unlike some of the other people in this cast, is not coming in with like any specific connection. She's the only person from her season. But I know that a lot of alumni say that usually you do a lot of conversing and socializing with the people whose seasons air around yours. And so I would imagine that like she has done at least a little bit of communication with the David versus Goliath people, maybe with a Rick. I mean, let's talk about that group in particular. Like, do you see a late 30s faction emerging? Do you think any of these people would want to work with Chrissy one way or the other?
Also with the time, the late 30s for Survivor seasons, but then also kind of age wise,
Yeah.
they kind of work. I don't necessarily see Chrissy working with somebody from the 40s. Like, I'm just looking at the cast at the bottom here.
You don't want to have a financial analyst, Emily Flippin, actuary Chrissy alliance?
I mean, I would love that. I just don't know if I'd see that happening. I could see Emily thinking that she's too much of a threat and wanting her out really quickly. Potentially. Maybe Savannah and her could maybe link up just for the fact that they had a similar tribal experience.
And also both won 4 individual immunity challenges. I will say, actually, there is one new era player. And I don't know if necessarily people are going to come in being like, you are the new blank. But I feel like Charlie gives massive Ryan vibes.
I guess okay, because it seems like he loves that like kind of older woman.
He loves the older woman, yeah.
So if that's the case, if she's trying to find her Ryan, I could totally lead into Charlie being her new Ryan. He definitely has the same type of energy, and I think it's a little bit his gameplay style could work with Chrissy, how I think she might play. But for the most part, though, I do think that she might stick with people from her age group and her kind of season era.
I could think that if Chrissy and Angelina wind up on the same tribe, like they might be thick as thieves. Because I think that Angelina sees a lot of those values in Chrissy that she wants. I mean, she made a whole business happen, after her season about like platforming women in powerful positions in politics. And so I think she sees a lot in like what Chrissy was espousing about like being a mother and being able to work her way out of the bottom and winning a record number of immunity challenges in her late 40s. Like, I think Angelina values that a lot. But I think if we're looking at that group, I am intrigued as to how Chrissy and Rick are going to get on. Because Ben obviously had the Ben bombs. Rick, it's weird to say, like, I don't know if he had like the Rick dynamite or whatever artillery he was bringing into tribal council, but it was a very similar vibe where he was clearly creating a lot of sparks, a lot of theatrics with all the stuff he was pulling out of his pocket. Is Chrissy going to, she found her new Ryan on the island. Could she be finding her new Ben here in the form of Rick?
If it's as an adversary, I just feel like that Rick might annoy Chrissy. I don't know, maybe because he annoyed me in his season. I'm sorry. But like Ben annoyed me as well, though, with like kind of like that bravado, but like the idols and all that stuff. And so I could see her maybe being like a little bit annoyed by Rick in the same way that she was maybe frustrated and annoyed with Ben on her season. So okay, if we're building a similar season as 35 here with 50. And with her journey to her path, I could see Charlie and Rick kind of playing those energetic positions of Ryan and Ben. I could see it.
let's rewind from Chrissy's time on Survivor, looking at, the 7 old schoolers that came before her. Anyone you're eyeballing here that could work with her, work against her prominently?
I think Aubrey, like you kind of mentioned Aubrey briefly. I think I can see her and Chrissy working well together. I feel like they would be familiar with both of their games, and I could see Aubrey being like, I want to work with Chrissy. Like I want to work with someone like Chrissy. I could see them wanting to work together, and I wouldn't be surprised if Suri wanted to kind of get in on this. Now, Chrissy kind of tended to work more with the men, more closely with the men, kind of, and so this could be a new way for her to maybe rectify how she plays this season, working more with the women, developing maybe these social connections. And so I would love a Suri Aubrey Chrissy connection alliance. Like, give it to me. CAC.
I mean, that's the thing, is that not to spoil the Aubrey podcast too much, even though this will come out before the fact, but like, I and my guest had predicted that like Aubrey will pick right back up from where Game Changers left off, alongside joining up with Suri. And yeah, if they want to bring Chrissy in, like, potential, I would say Black Widow Brigade 2.0, because that kind of happened on Australia versus the world, maybe like 2.5.
Yeah, I mean, I love that. I don't know if it's gonna happen. I want it to happen. I guess as soon as we know what the tribes look like, we'll be able to see if it's like even a possibility in the early game. But that would definitely be my ideal trio.
All right. Well, I'm going to expand those ideals even further for you, Chantele, as I have one last question for you, but it's a big one.
Uh-oh.
Why will Chrissy Hofbeck win Survivor 50?
Chrissy will win because I believe in lore. I believe in righting wrongs. I believe in her whole story. So we kind of talk about her journey on 35. She didn't get to slay the dragon, and she's coming back. She's a little bit older. She's a little bit wiser. And I feel like it's giving her an opportunity to right all of her wrongs and get the win that she deserves. And so I think that she is going to have done her homework. I think that she's going to come back because I think she believes that she deserved to win season 35. I do believe that. And I think that she's going to make sure that she deserves and rightfully wins season 50, because I feel like it's just written in the stars. Like it just seems like it would be so poetic for her to come back and win.
I love that you mentioned the Dragon Slayer again, considering that she is literally playing with the Dragon Slayer this season.
Coach! Yeah, get rid of him. No.
Well, regardless, Chantele, you brought the fire, much like a dragon did, in your opinions about Chrissy, who, yeah, again, was a major factor in Heroes, Healers, Hustlers, and I say better late than never when it comes to bringing her back. She has been through a lot, but I think, as you mentioned, she still has a lot that is on her mind about her first time playing. And look, I think she had a very good backbone in terms of like thinking through the numbers and the maneuvering through everything. And who knows, returning player seasons may not be as predicated on a social game or key core relationships as a newbie season. But regardless, I think that Chrissy would be one of the fundamental people to analyze not only someone's finances, but I suppose her own assets and liabilities, and be able to come out hopefully $1 million richer. Chantele, any final thoughts about Chrissy, and what would you like to plug for the listeners out there?
No plugs. Well, maybe a plug. But what I've been doing.
Maybe I'll nibble on a plug.
Okay, well, first I'll talk about like this season, and then I'll think of a plug. I'm really excited to see Chrissy play. I've been excited to see her play since her original season. Thought that there'd be an opportunity for her to come back before this one. We didn't think that the world was going to shut down, and the game was going to change in the way it is now. And I am just excited to see her just get her footing in this new era of Survivor. I'm very much excited for it. And I think that a lot of people will be too, just like kind of watching some of these old school players, just to see how they fit in a little bit in this new school format. So I'm very excited to watch her play. I think that I can totally see her story being the storyline of the season. So like right now, she is my winner pick. Okay.
Okay.
She's my winner pick of the season. I don't know anything about anything else, but like, I just feel like I already told you that the story of Chrissy would be such a great one for the producers and the editors to tell. And I'm going to put all my energy and thoughts into that because I want it so bad.
There we go. All right, now nibble on that plug. What else would you like for the listeners that are need more Chantele in their lives? How can they do so?
Need more me. Well, on my channel, Reality Realness, I will be covering Love Island
with 3 S's, much like Triple H.
Oh, with 3 S's. I don't have the S's meaning anything though. I have to maybe work on that.
Not too late to acronymize it. I don't even know if that's a word.
Acronymize. To make an acronym of. So I'm going to be covering Love Island All-Stars season, I think it's 3. That's going to be coming around. I will be talking about the Traitors at some point, which will be fun. I'm very excited because we know somebody that might be participating. That will be very fun to watch his game. And then also me and Chappelle. We have been taking me down memory lane. Well, not my memory, but memory of other people. Because I have not seen any of the Flavor of Love series, the origin story of Tiffany Pollard, New York. And so we are getting to the end of season 2. And then I don't even know what comes next in the order of this whole universe. But right now we're getting to the end of season 2 and we will be going onward and upwards. So that's on RHAP. Kick back. We will be talking more about New York and Flavor of Love and that whole universe. So there's some plugs.
All right. Well, next up for us, we are going from Chrissy to Christian Hofbeck, another person from this era that I think a lot of us were worried would not get the chance to come back. But luckily, he is back in our lives, on our screens, on Survivor 50. We'll give you everything and anything you need to know about one of the biggest characters from the late 30s, one of the best analysts of the game, and see how that might translate a la binary code to his second time around. In the meantime, we want to hear your thoughts. What do you think Chrissy might change about her game from her first season to her second season based on what happened? Or does she need to change her game? How do you think she might stack up being in the middle of sort of like the old school contestants and the new era? We want to hear from you all as we keep getting to know the cast of Survivor 50 before the highly anticipated 3-hour premiere on February 25th. Thank you all, as always, so much for listening. Chantele, thank you for your fantastic insights. Until next time, everybody, take care. Bye-bye.
This is RHAP. We know reality TV.